Miami was a city of contrasts, its vibrant energy hiding a labyrinth of secrets. Tourists flocked to its golden beaches and neon-lit streets, but for Lily and Tom, it had become a place where dreams felt both within reach and painfully distant. The couple had moved to Miami 3 years ago, lured by Tom's promotion at a high-end luxury car dealership. For Lily, an aspiring photographer, the city's colorful streets and lively art scene promised inspiration. They had built a comfortable life in their sleek apartment overlooking Biscayne Bay, but cracks had begun to form in the glossy facade of their marriage. It started with the late night. Tom had always worked hard, but the demands of his new role seemed endless. "I'll be home late," he would text, the hours stretching into the early morning. Lily tried to stay understanding, but loneliness gnawed at her. On the surface, everything appeared fine. They still attended charity galas and rooftop parties, presenting the perfect image of a successful couple. But behind closed doors, the silences grew longer. The intimacy that once defined their relationship, now a distant memory. "Maybe we just need to reconnect," Lily suggested one evening as they sat on the balcony, watching the city lights shimmer on the water. Tom nodded distractedly, scrolling through his phone. "Sure, we can plan a getaway soon." But soon never came. Lily found herself spending more time alone, wandering through Miami's art districts with her camera. One afternoon, as she was photographing the vibrant murals in Wynwood, she bumped into someone, literally. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, looking up to see a man with sharp features and an easy smile. "No harm done," he said, steadying her. "I should have been watching where I was going." Lily laughed nervously. "I guess we're both guilty then." He extended a hand. "I'm Adrian. And you?" "Maybe." Adrian's gaze lingered on her camera. "Photographer?" "Trying to be," she said, a hint of self-deprecation in her voice. "Well, you're in the right place. Wynwood's a gold mine for talent." They ended up walking together, talking about art, photography, and Miami's hidden gems. Adrian was charming and attentive, his enthusiasm infectious. By the time they parted ways, Lily realized she hadn't thought about Tom once. Adrian handed her a business card. "If you ever want to explore the city's art scene with a local, let me know." She hesitated but slipped the card into her bag. That evening, Tom came home late again, his tie loosened and his face weary. "How was work?" Lily asked as she plated the dinner she had kept warm. "Same as always," he replied, barely glancing at her. Lily's frustration bubbled beneath the surface, but she swallowed it down. "I met someone interesting today," she said, testing the waters. "Oh," Tom's tone was distracted. "In Wynwood, an art curator. He knows a lot about the local scene." "That's nice," Tom said, already scrolling through his phone. Lily bit her lip, anger and sadness warring within her. "Do you even care?" she asked quietly. Tom looked up, startled. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I feel like I'm invisible to you, Tom, like I don't even exist." He sighed heavily. "Lily, I'm working my ass off for us. I don't have the energy for this right now." She turned away, tears stinging her eyes. "Maybe you should make some." The days that followed were a blur of cold silences and shallow pleasantries. Desperate for distraction, Lily found herself pulling out Adrian's card one evening. She typed out a quick message. "Hey, it's Lily from Wynwood. Still up for that art tour?" His response came almost instantly. "Absolutely. How about tomorrow?" Adrian met her in Little Havana, a neighborhood bursting with life and culture. He showed her the vibrant murals, introduced her to local artists, and even taught her how to roll a cigar at a small family-owned shop. For the first time in months, Lily felt alive. Adrian's easy charm and genuine interest in her photography filled a void she hadn't realized was so deep. As the day turned into evening, they found themselves sitting in a cozy cafe, sipping cafecitos. "You have a good eye," Adrian said, nodding toward her camera, "but you're holding back." Lily raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Your photos are beautiful, but they're safe. You need to take risks, show the raw emotion behind the lens." His words struck a chord, and for the first time in a long time, Lily felt seen. The outings with Adrian became more frequent. Lily told herself it was harmless, a friendship built on mutual interests, but she couldn't ignore the growing electricity between them. One evening, as they walked along South Beach, the warm ocean breeze brushing against their skin, Adrian stopped suddenly. "You know there's something here," he said, his voice low. Lily's heart raced. "Adrian, I'm married." "Are you happy?" he asked simply. She opened her mouth to reply but couldn't find the words. Adrian stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "You deserve to be seen, Lily, to be appreciated." Before she could stop herself, she leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tender and electrifying. The moment they pulled apart, guilt crashed over her like a wave. "I can't do this," she whispered, stepping back. Adrian nodded, his expression soft but understanding. "I'll be here if you change your mind." The days that followed were a blur of emotions for Lily. The kiss with Adrian lingered in her mind, a mix of warmth and shame that she couldn't shake. She threw herself into her photography, hoping the creative outlet would silence her thoughts. Tom, oblivious to her inner turmoil, continued his long work hours. Their conversations were minimal, their time together strained. One evening, as she edited photos in their living room, Tom walked in, loosening his tie. "Long day," he said, collapsing onto the couch. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked, hopeful. He shook his head. "I'm too tired. Maybe tomorrow." The words stung more than they should have. Lily looked at him, wondering how they had drifted so far apart. Despite her guilt, Lily couldn't bring herself to cut off contact with Adrian. She avoided seeing him in person, but found herself texting him late at night when the silence of the apartment became too much. Adrian's messages were always warm, attentive, and filled with encouragement about her photography. But there was an undercurrent of flirtation that made her pulse quicken. One evening, as the golden hues of the Miami sunset painted the sky, Adrian sent her a message. "The light is perfect right now. You should be out capturing it." Lily hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then she replied, "I don't have the energy today." Adrian's response came quickly. "Sometimes the best art comes from facing what you're feeling head on. Meet me at Bayfront Park. I'll show you." She knew she shouldn't, but something about his words stirred a longing in her, a desire to feel alive again. Lily arrived at the park just as the sun dipped below the horizon, its last rays casting a fiery glow over the water. Adrian was waiting near the pier, his camera slung over his shoulder. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, his smile warm. "I shouldn't have," she admitted, but she didn't turn away. He handed her his camera. "Then let's make it worth it." They spent the next hour exploring the park, capturing candid moments of the people and the city as it transitioned from day to night. Adrian's presence was intoxicating, his easy laughter and insightful critiques drawing her in. As they sat on a bench overlooking the bay, Adrian turned to her. "Lily, do you ever think about what makes you happy?" She looked at him, her chest tightening. "I don't know anymore." "You deserve to," he said softly, his hand brushing against hers. Lily didn't pull away this time. Instead, she let herself lean into him, their kiss deep and unrestrained. For the first time in months, she felt wanted, needed, and alive. But the moment they pulled apart, reality crashed back in. "I have to go," she whispered, standing abruptly. "Lily," Adrian called after her, but she was already walking away. Back at the apartment, Lily paced the living room, her heart pounding. She felt torn between the life she had built with Tom and the magnetic pull of Adrian's presence. Tom came home late, as usual. He barely glanced at her as he tossed his briefcase onto the counter. "Rough day?" she asked, trying to sound normal. "Same as always," he muttered, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Lily bit her lip, the weight of her secret threatening to crush her. "Tom, can we talk?" He looked at her, his brow furrowing. "What about?" "About us. About how we've been drifting apart." Tom sighed, sitting heavily on the couch. "Lily, I know I've been distant, but I'm doing this for us, for our future. I don't need more things, Tom. I need you." His expression softened, but he didn't have an answer. Oh. The following week, Lily avoided Adrian entirely. She threw herself into her photography, capturing the vibrant energy of Miami's streets and beaches. But no matter how much she tried to distract herself, Adrian's words echoed in her mind. One evening, Tom surprised her by coming home early. He set the table with takeout from her favorite Cuban restaurant and opened a bottle of wine. "What's all this?" Lily asked, her heart lifting slightly. "I figured we could use a night together," he said, smiling faintly. They ate in relative peace, talking about lighter topics. For a moment it felt like old times. But as the evening went on, the underlying issues surfaced again. "Have you been happier lately?" Tom asked suddenly, his tone guarded. Lily froze, her fork hovering mid-air. "What do you mean?" "You've been different, distant." The irony of his words wasn't lost on her. "I could say the same about you," she replied. Tom frowned. "I'm trying, Lily. I really am." She wanted to believe him, but was it too late? Adrian texted again a few days later. "Meet me, just one last time." Lily stared at the message, her mind and heart in turmoil. She knew she should delete it, block his number and never look back, but the ache in her chest wouldn't let her. That evening, as Tom worked late yet again, Lily found herself walking to Adrian's apartment. When he opened the door, the intensity in his eyes was unmistakable. "I shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "But you are," he replied, stepping closer. The room was dimly lit, the Miami skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Adrian reached for her, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. Their kiss was desperate, fueled by months of longing and unspoken desires. For a moment, Lily let herself forget everything, her guilt, her marriage, her doubts. But as they stood there, tangled in each other's arms, a voice in her mind screamed that this wasn't who she wanted to be. "I can't do this," she said, pulling away abruptly. Adrian's expression was a mix of confusion and pain. "Lily, I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I can't." She fled the apartment, the weight of her choices pressing down on her like a storm. The night Lily fled Adrian's apartment, Miami seemed unnaturally quiet. The streets, usually alive with music and chatter, were muted, as if reflecting her turmoil. She walked aimlessly for hours, the guilt of her choices weighing heavily on her. By the time she returned to the apartment, it was past midnight. The living room lights were on, and Tom was sitting on the couch, his face unreadable. "You're late," he said, his voice calm but sharp. Lily froze, her breath catching. "I went out to take pictures." Tom's gaze bore into her, and she realized he wasn't buying it. "Pictures?" he repeated, his tone laced with disbelief. "Lily, I might be busy, but I'm not blind. You've been distant for weeks. I've tried to ignore it, but now," he gestured to her disheveled state, "now I need to know. What's going on?" Lily's heart raced. She wanted to lie, to deny everything. But the look in Tom's eyes broke her resolve. "There's someone else," she whispered, barely able to say the words. Tom's face crumpled, and he leaned back as if the air had been knocked out of him. "I knew something was wrong," he said hoarsely, "but I didn't think—" He stopped, shaking his head. Did you sleep with him?" "No," Lily said quickly, tears streaming down her face. "It never went that far, but there were, moments." Tom closed his eyes, his hands gripping the edge of the couch. Why wasn't I enough for you?" "You are," she said desperately. "You've always been enough." "But I was lonely, Tom. You were never here. And Don't blame this on me," he snapped, his voice rising. "You think I wanted to work late every night? I was doing this for us, for our future." "I know," she sobbed. "I know, and I'm sorry. I messed up. But I want to fix this." Tom stared at her for a long moment, his expression a mix of anger and heartbreak. "I don't know if we can fix this, Lily. I don't know if I can trust you again." In the days that followed, the apartment became a battlefield of silence and tension. Tom spent most of his time at work, while Lily threw herself into her photography, trying to make sense of her emotions. Adrian reached out several times, but she ignored his calls and texts. She knew seeing him again would only make things worse. One afternoon, as she walked along the beach with her camera, Lily found herself photographing a young couple playing in the surf. They looked so carefree, so in love, that it brought tears to her eyes. She remembered when she and Tom had been like that, and the memory was almost too painful to bear. Her phone buzzed, breaking her reverie. It was a text from Tom. "We need to talk. Dinner tonight." Her stomach twisted as she replied, "Okay." Dinner was tense, the sound of silverware on plates the only thing breaking the silence. "I've been thinking," Tom began, setting down his fork, "about us, about what happened." Lily looked up, her heart pounding. "And?" "I'm willing to try," he said, his voice steady. "But things have to change. We can't keep going the way we've been." She nodded, hope flickering in her chest. "I want to try too. I'll do whatever it takes." Tom's gaze hardened. "That means cutting him off completely. No more texts, no more calls. If I find out you've even spoken to him." He didn't finish the sentence, but the warning was clear. "I already have," she said quietly. "I haven't spoken to him since that night." Tom studied her, as if trying to decide whether to believe her. Finally, he nodded. "Good." In the weeks that followed, Lily and Tom began to rebuild their relationship. They went on dates, revisited places they had loved in the early days of their marriage, and started talking more openly about their feelings. For a while, it seemed like they might make it. But the shadow of Adrian still lingered, unspoken but ever present. One evening, as Lily was editing photos in her studio, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I need to see you. It's important." Her heart sank. She didn't need to guess who it was. Against her better judgment, she replied, "Adrian, I can't." His response was immediate. "Please, just one last time. I have something to tell you." Lily stared at the message, torn. She knew she shouldn't go, but curiosity and a lingering sense of guilt got the better of her. They met at a small cafe on the edge of Little Havana. Adrian looked different. Tired, almost defeated. "I didn't come to cause trouble," he said as she sat down. "I just needed you to know something." "What is it?" she asked, her voice wary. "I'm leaving Miami," he said, "for good." Lily's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because I can't stay here knowing I messed up your life," he admitted. "I care about you too much to keep being a distraction." His words took her by surprise, and for the first time she saw the depth of his remorse. "I'm sorry too," she said softly, "for everything." They parted with a quiet goodbye, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between them. When Lily returned home, Tom was waiting for her. "Where were you?" he asked, his tone sharp. She hesitated, her heart sinking. "I went to see Adrian. He's leaving town." Tom's face darkened. "So after everything, you still went to see him?" "I needed closure," she said desperately. "It's over, Tom. I swear." Tom stared at her for a long moment before shaking his head. "I don't know if I can do this, Lily." In the days that followed, it became clear that their marriage couldn't survive the cracks. Tom moved out of the apartment, leaving Lily alone with her guilt and regret. She threw herself into her photography, using the pain as fuel for her art. Her work gained recognition, her photos appearing in galleries and magazines. But success felt hollow without Tom by her side. Years later, Lily stood on the same beach where she had photographed the couple in the surf. Her camera hung around her neck, the familiar weight comforting. She had built a new life, one filled with art and self-discovery, but the scars of her past remained, a reminder of the choices that had shaped her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she whispered to the waves, "I'm sorry." The ocean carried her words away, leaving her with the silence and a fragile sense of peace. They met at a small cafe on the edge of Little Havana. Adrian looked different. Tired, almost defeated. "I didn't come to cause trouble," he said as she sat down. "I just needed you to know something." "What is it?" she asked, her voice wary. "I'm leaving Miami," he said, "for good." Lily's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because I can't stay here knowing I messed up your life," he admitted. "I care about you too much to keep being a distraction." His words took her by surprise, and for the first time she saw the depth of his remorse. "I'm sorry too," she said softly, "for everything." They parted with a quiet goodbye, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between them. When Lily returned home, Tom was waiting for her. "Where were you?" he asked, his tone sharp. She hesitated, her heart sinking. "I went to see Adrian. He's leaving town." Tom's face darkened. "So after everything, you still went to see him?" "I needed closure," she said desperately. "It's over, Tom. I swear." Tom stared at her for a long moment before shaking his head. "I don't know if I can do this, Lily." In the days that followed, it became clear that their marriage couldn't survive the cracks. Tom moved out of the apartment, leaving Lily alone with her guilt and regret. She threw herself into her photography, using the pain as fuel for her art. Her work gained recognition, her photos appearing in galleries and magazines. But success felt hollow without Tom by her side. Years later, Lily stood on the same beach where she had photographed the couple in the surf. Her camera hung around her neck, the familiar weight comforting. She had built a new life, one filled with art and self-discovery, but the scars of her past remained, a reminder of the choices that had shaped her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she whispered to the waves, "I'm sorry." The ocean carried her words away, leaving her with the silence and a fragile sense of peace.